All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Legacy Evolution Cyberverse Universe Shadow Striker. Yeah, it's cool to get an actual toy of this character, just because I wasn't really invested in buying any of the Cyberverse toys when they came out, and a lot of those were a little bit more like kid-friendly toys that weren't really up to snuff in terms of like generations style figures or anything like that. So it's cool to get a version of this character, another female Decepticon. It's good to actually have more female characters, which is one thing that Cyberverse did really well, is that they actually had a pretty balanced cast in terms of male and female characters, at least compared to other Transformers series. But yeah, no, this is an interesting figure because when we first saw images of this toy, it was pretty obvious based on the robot mode that this is clearly a pre-tool for an RID sideburn figure that will be coming in the future, and we've already seen that on leaked listings that there is going to be a sideburn. So obviously it's going to use this mold. I'm kind of interested to see if they like do any sort of retooling, because I think that the robot mode is pretty spot on, but in terms of the vehicle mode, at least with the front of the car here, it really doesn't look much like Sideburn at all. Which obviously, it's like, okay, Sideburn is one of those like licensed cars, so they can't make it like totally spot on, but having this like three-tiered like hood here, I think works perfectly well for Shadow Striker. But when this is eventually used as Sideburn, I'm wondering if they're going to retool that to look a little bit different, just to get it as close as possible to the original car. But I get that's more of a discussion for that figure when it comes out as Shadow Striker. It's a fairly decent figure. It's grown on me a little bit, even though I just got it yesterday. But like I've had a few problems with it, and then I've kind of like either looked past those or find solutions. But yeah, no, it's a nice looking car mode. It rolls fairly well. It does have this issue, so it does have this bit of like parts forming where the back bumper here just pegs into the back there, and has to come off for transformation. And it's sometimes kind of difficult to get this like actually like locked in place, because you can see it always wants to like just move itself up there a little bit. I found a lot of the tab slot connections on this figure to be a little bit loose. Like they always kind of are just guiding points, so you can like get the bumper set in there just fine if you like push it into place. Like there's room for it, but it always just wants to work itself off just a little bit, which is a little bit annoying. Also has this gap back here, and again, like the roof doesn't totally stay flush all the time, but even when you do like plug it in all the way, there's still already still a little bit of a gap back there, which annoys me a little bit. But it's not the end of the world. All things considered, I think it's a fairly decent car mode. It's got the nice, raised engine there to, again, look like that version of Sideburn, basically. And it's kind of funny that they use this mold for Shadow Striker too, because the first time we actually got the trademark of Shadow Striker was in I want to say BotCon 2-pack, where they used two versions of the Sideburn mold to be Shadow Striker and another figure whose name I definitely can't remember right now, but it was basically like two sister characters, and one of them was a Shadow Striker, which doesn't at all look like the version of Shadow Striker from Cyberverse, but it's kind of doing that thing where it's just like, oh, okay, we're doing a new Skyquake, and because Skyquake was also a G1 name and also turned into a jet, it kind of is a fusion between Prime Skyquake and the G1 Skyquake. It's kind of a similar thing there, where it's like, oh, this is the body style of the the original like Shadow Striker, and then the like colors and head sculpt of the new Shadow Striker, which is kind of interesting. I am sort of wondering if they're going to do like a like a Generation Selects version of like the one that looks more like the original Shadow Striker at any point using this mold. But either way, no, pretty cool vehicle mode. Now she does come with this weapon here, and how they want you to store it is, the unfortunate, still usual way of just plugging it onto the top of the car here, making it look worse. It always drives me nuts. And what I actually found out was if so this whole plate ends up being like a big shield on her arm, right? And if you start off transformation, you just kind of like unpeg here. There's another thing that I'm saying, is that these arms tab into place notionally, but they're mostly just like guiding places. So like even when you hinge this up, it kind of always comes untabbed. But what I found was there actually is a pretty decent amount of space in here, like between the arms in the vehicle mode. And if you flip the gun like this and you just slot it in there like that, there's totally enough room for it to fit in there, and it's kind of just enough room so it doesn't even like really like rattle around. Like that rattling sound is literally just the wheels, not the gun. So it can store completely unobtrusively in the vehicle mode and cause no problems. So again, it's one of those things where it's just like, you see how easy it is to do integrated weapon storage if you just like make a design priority. Not even make it a design priority, make it a design intention, like literally at all, because like the space was already there from the design. It just worked out that way. Would have liked it better if it tabbed in or anything, but because it's just the perfect amount of space, at least it doesn't, like rattle around. So that works perfectly fine for me, but it's it's like, oh, look how easy there was for a solution. I get it when they're like making these figures and it's not like the top priority and they're like, okay, there's no space in this vehicle mode, so we're just gonna peg it on top. I don't like it, but I get it. But when there literally is space, like, just take the extra step of being like, oh, maybe the gun could go there. Right? I don't know how the design process works, but whatever. It's mostly just a conceptual nitpick. For this figure in and of itself, that works fine for me. So that's great storage. But yeah, in terms of a comparison, singular, because I don't really have a lot to compare her with, to be honest. Here she is, just for the standard one with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see it's a fairly small car. She's pretty much, she's a little bit taller than him, but definitely shorter and thinner. So I actually think that means that she's more in scale, because the Lambo mold is a little bit big for scaling with things like Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and stuff like that. So this works well for me, but that's what she looks like with him. And then yeah, I don't really have anything else to compare her with in this mold, just because I don't really have a lot of other Cyberverse characters aside from the ones that are also G1 characters. So yeah, in terms of transformation, we do start off by just taking off the back bumper here and just putting it off to the side. Now the whole shield roof section also can unpeg. It's just pegged into the arm here, and you can peg it into either arm because it has this double hinge section. You could do it either way, but it also can just stay there for transformation because that's kind of where it goes in robot mode anyway. And I usually just leave it on because it's more of a hassle to actually just like peg it back into the arm than it is to just like work around it in transformation. So I'll leave that there. If you've got the gun stored anywhere, take that off to the side. And then next you want to take these side panels and just unpeg them and fold them out to the side just like that. And then we've got this section here. You kind of want to like unlock the bumper. This can be kind of a pain because there's not a lot of clearance to do this. It's even worse going back into car mode, but you just want to unlock the bumper here and kind of bring it up until it opens up this whole section just like that. And it can be a real pain to get this back into that into the mode, like into vehicle mode, because if you look, it kind of hooks over these little tabs here, which have kind of an angle on this side so that when you're pulling it up, it can kind of angle off of that. But when you're going back, it really just kind of runs into it, so you really have to like force the plastic into place, and can be kind of a pain. I do find sometimes if you're having that issue, it can be kind of easier to bring this down first while the legs are still kind of like down like this, and then kind of rotate it up into it. It takes a bit of strategy. I don't know if I've really gotten quite the right formula yet, but yeah, it's kind of a pain, but it's not too bad going out of this mode. And then yeah, you just want to untab the legs. They tab into the side right here, and then the feet also tab in back here. So you just want to bring them down like this, and the front of the car actually becomes their waist piece, which I think is kind of interesting. And then just take the feet, fold them down just like that. And then you want to take this center section of the hood here and just independently rotate that down so it kind of folds into the body just like that. And then take these pieces and also fold them down, but then wrap it around the body. So you want to fold up the chest like that, and then kind of bring these pieces so they kind of like wrap around this this armature here. And then you just want to take these panels here with back wheels on them, rotate them back till they click into place, and then take this whole section, and it will kind of triple hinge technically down onto the back, and then lock in at the top and at the bottom just like that. And there we have Shadow Striker in her robot mode. Let me just adjust the camera here. And yeah, all things considered, I think she looks fairly good. Obviously, there is a bit of awkwardness to this, but some of that is kind of intentional since it is trying to replicate the look of that, RID Sideburn figure, which is kind of awkward, like having the huge panel as like a shield. And RAD was a very like shelf formery and Ghibli toy line, so there's a bit of that I can excuse because I think it's like kind of supposed to be that way because it's trying to look like that character. But there's some awkwardness to the proportions here. I think that the main thing for me is just how far the arms sit back, because they're not actually attached to the body, they're attached to these back panels, kind of just like core class rat trap from Kingdom. So there's some awkwardness because like the headline is right here, and then the line of where the hips are is a little bit further back than that, and then the line of where the shoulders are is a little bit further back than that. So it kind of just results in looking like the head and the chest are just like a little bit too far forward. But I can kind of get used to that. I'm starting to get used to it because, like, initially, I think that really kind of put me off, but it's not terrible. She also does have a bit of a backpack. It's kind of interesting. These pieces are hinged just to, like get out of the way. But they kind of act as like little, coattails on the back here, which on the one hand is kind of neat, but on the other hand is a little bit Ghibli. And then again, there's the whole like parts forming thing. So this panel, there's a few things you can do with it. You can't, unfortunately, put it on the hole that's actually on her back. That would be ideal, I think, of just plugging it in like that, and then you could just plug in the weapon to that. But the peg is too shallow, so it can't fit there. So there's a few things you could do. You could just put it on the shield here. Again, it's a little bit too shallow to stay like firmly on there. The way that I found is the best is I just plug it onto her other arm here to kind of even things out. And, as a little guard on her arm, I think that looks totally fine. And again, something that this mold doesn't really do to capture the Cyberverse Shadow Striker design is in the show, she's a little bit asymmetrical just because she's like, lockdown style, kind of like replaced some of her parts and stuff like that, yet still somehow turns into a vehicle mode that looks mostly cohesive. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. And they don't really have any of that going on here with like having one of her legs be like brown or whatever. So at least, the sideburn design gives her a little bit of asymmetry, but there's no real like design implication here that she's replaced any of her parts or whatever. This is more just like a Shadow Striker before having all that done to her, which is fine with me, honestly. The head sculpt looks great. I think it's very true to the Cyberverse design, but definitely feels like it fits in with Generations as well. She's got the nice the singular eye there, the big kind of monocle eye, and looks pretty good. The chest design, again, not something that we really saw in the Cyberverse design, but I think it works for a Shadow Striker. I think it looks pretty good. Now, in terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint here. It's on a ball joint connected like, on a longer stalk, so she's got a bit of a neck. But unfortunately, just because of the way it's cut out, usually that kind of style of ball joint would give you like a really expressive amount of side-to-side movement. She really doesn't have anything just because of the way that slot was cut. So you can look forward and back a little bit, and then it can rotate, obviously, but, nothing really crazy there. The arms, again, because they're connected to the back, are a little bit weird because they can rotate out to the side just like that, just fine. And they can rotate forward just fine, but they kind of have that thing going on where it's like you rotate them forward and they're locked into place, which is not really the case, because if you work with the joints, you can get her arm into like whatever position you want. It works. It's just, not as fluid because it's not moving as, intuitively. Oh, I hope they just pulled that off of I thought it just unpegged, but nope. It actually came off of the little hinge section there. So, usually for the most part, you can get whatever her arms in whatever pose you want. Like it's not a whole lot more restricted than, just like regular arm joints, but you do kind of have to work with the joint to make it happen. She also has a bicep swivel, maybe like a degree or two less of 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. She's got wrist swivels, which is nice. A waist cut works pretty well. And then also, these can kind of hinge back to get out of the way. Hips can go forward and back as far as, the coattails will allow it, and out to the side. She's got a thigh swivel. Her knees kind of lock into place for transformation, but, once you unlock them, they get a little, maybe a degree over 90 degrees of bend at the knee there. And then the feet can tilt forward for transformation and tilt out to the side, but nothing to, tilt them back. So, decent articulation. Like I said, the shoulders are a little bit weird, but they mostly work. Like you can mostly get her in, whatever pose you'd want her to. And then in terms of the weapon here, she can hold it just as a gun like that, and I think that looks pretty good. You can also do, the whole like sideburn thing of having this thing going on, which I don't know if this is the best solution to get that like crossbow weapon, because like I think it has the same kind of silhouette from the top, but it is just a car bumper on the end of a gun, so it looks really weird no matter which way you rotate it. For her, that's not something that really matters because there's no precedent for her really having like a gun like this aside from like the original Shadow Striker. But that's going to be kind of like a, I don't know, not a great imitation of Sideburns gun when we get this as Sideburn, so whatever. Yeah, in terms of storage, the gun itself can actually peg into the back here like this, which I think works pretty well. And then also, like I said, I didn't take it off for transformation, but this whole piece can come off. So if you don't want it on her arm, you can store it on the back, but it only goes on one way. Because if you notice here, the little peg that's on this like hinge section is kind of like off center, like it's a little bit further up. And if you try to plug it in like this, then that piece there kind of bumps into the wheels, like it doesn't really have the clearance. But if you rotate it around the other way, it does have the clearance to peg in. Again, can be kind of annoying just because it's a peg with a double hinge attached to it. But it does jut out the back like that. You can like fold it off to the side a little bit, but then again, that hinge kind of runs into the wheels there. So yeah, it's always kind of like flopping back and forth. And then I guess from there, you could plug the gun onto the shield. And then if you wanted to, you could also plug the bumper onto the bottom of the gun. So you could technically have everything stored on her back. I just think is a little bit awkward and like jutting out. So I usually just leave the bumper and the shield section on her arms and then store the gun back there. But to each his own. You've got some options there in terms of what can plug in. It's a shame that the bumper can't plug into that, because that's probably where I'd want to store it. Because it is kind of just, like technically it's supposed to be part of the weapon, but it is otherwise just kind of like a useless piece of like of parts forming, which is not ideal, but I can live with it. And then the other neat thing you can do with the gun here is for whatever reason there is a little tab on the on this handle here, but she does have an opening in her fingers wide enough that if you like get that in the right way, you can slide it into her hand like this, and it's supposed to be sculpted like it's a little knife, which is it's kind of an unconvincing knife. But what you could also do is dropping a figure on the floor there. You could take a blast effect and give her like a little lightsaber, and I think that actually looks pretty cool. So that's an option there if you wanted to do that. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to robot mode in terms of comparisons with her here. Just for the standard one, here she is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see fairly average size Deluxe. She's a little bit shorter than he is, but not by a whole lot. They're pretty much on par there. And I dropped her on the floor here, but just for another as close as we can get to a Cyberverse comparison, here she is with Generations Windblade, who we just got revealed that we're getting a new Windblade, so I think they'll look better together. But here she is with the only version of Windblade that I have currently. Not going to bother to even try to get her to stand, because what's the point with this figure? But they look fairly decent together. And like I said, those are the only I mean, she's not even a Cyberverse original character really, but I don't have a lot of other Cyberverse characters aside from just the ones that are also G1 characters, so not a whole lot else to show her off with. But yeah, fairly decent figure. I think that it's grown on me quite a bit. My main issues really were like the how the shoulders sit too far back, which I've just kind of gotten used to, and how the gun didn't store in vehicle mode, which I found a solution to. So all things considered, I think it's a pretty decent figure. Definitely a bit of awkwardness to the design, but some of that you kind of want there if you want it to be accurate to Sideburn, so I can't even really blame it too much on that front. But yeah, nice head sculpt, decent articulation, all things considered, since I found a way to store the gun, pretty decent weapon storage too. But yeah, no, good figure. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Make sure to check me out on my Instagram account. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Cyberverse Universe Shadow Striker.